She was never allowed back on The Tonight Show after this. The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson wasn't just late-night television, it was the ultimate cultural proving ground. If you made Johnny laugh, Hollywood opened its doors. If you annoyed him even a little, your career might stall before your next booking. And if you really crossed a line, if you embarrassed him, challenged him, or made him look foolish in front of America, you were done. Finished. You might as well have been erased from NBC's guest list forever. And that's exactly what happened to one actress who walked onto Carson's stage one night and made a decision she would regret for the rest of her career. It was bold, shocking, and offensive in a way even the king of late night couldn't joke his way out of. The moment she did it, everyone knew. This wasn't just a blunder. It was a career killer. But before we get to the infamous night she torpedoed her own future, you have to understand why the punishment was so brutal. Why crossing Carson meant exile. Johnny Carson wasn't merely a talk show host. He was a gatekeeper. Born in 1925 in Corning, Iowa, he grew up a quiet kid with a love for magic. Literally. A book on sleight of hand turned a 12-year-old Johnny into the Great Carsoni, performing tricks for neighbors, friends, and anyone who'd watch. But magic wasn't all he mastered. During World War II, while serving as a U.S. Navy communications officer aboard the USS Pennsylvania, Carson developed a razor-sharp wit that would later define an entire generation of comedy. After the war, he raced through the University of Nebraska in 3 years, majoring in speech and drama. The kid who once practiced card tricks in his bedroom was suddenly writing and performing for radio, then television, then Hollywood legends like Red Skelton and Jack Benny. By 1962, the boy from Iowa became the face of America's most important late-night show. And once he took that stage, everything changed. Carson transformed The Tonight Show into a nightly ritual for millions of Americans. His monologues were sharp, his timing flawless, and his ability to handle awkward guests unmatched. If a joke bombed, he saved it. If a guest froze, he revived them. If chaos broke out, he turned it into comedy gold. Behind the curtain, though, Johnny was a different man. He held grudges. Real grudges. Joan Rivers found out the hard way when she accepted her own talk show deal without telling him. Johnny shut her out completely, never spoke to her again, and banned her from The Tonight Show for life. Impressionist Rich Little? Banned for mocking Johnny once too often. Dana Carvey? Imitated him on SNL, then dared to do the impression on Johnny's stage. Career over. Even the mighty Wayne Newton nearly came to blows with Carson after being the butt of too many jokes. If Johnny felt disrespected, there was no second chance. And yet, none of their bans happened live on national television. This story did. Her name was Cherie O'Terry? No. Roseanne? No. Madonna? No. Those are the names people assume. But the truth is even more surprising. The woman permanently banned from Johnny Carson's show after a single disastrous appearance was none other than Shelley Winters, the Academy Award-winning actress, the Hollywood veteran, the outspoken firecracker who lived her entire life refusing to play by anyone's rules, including Johnny Carson's. Winters was known for being unpredictable, brutally honest, and completely unfiltered. On a talk show, she could be charming, or she could ignite a nuclear-level disaster. And on the night she appeared with Carson, she chose chaos. Here's how it went down. It was the mid-1970s, And Winters, already famous for films like A Place in the Sun and The Poseidon Adventure, was booked as a guest. Carson expected the usual: stories, laughs, maybe a little harmless eccentricity. But Winters showed up in a fiery mood. She had been drinking backstage, and when she walked out, it became clear she was unpredictable. Johnny started with simple questions, but Winters didn't want softball setups. She wanted to dominate. Every time Carson tried to steer the conversation, she interrupted him, lectured him, or contradicted him. The audience laughed at first, thinking it was a bit. It wasn't. Carson's annoyance grew visible as Winters talked over him again and again. Then came the moment she sealed her fate. When Carson made a mild joke about one of her past marriages, Winters exploded. Not playfully, but genuinely furious. She stood up, grabbed her glass of water, and dumped it all over Johnny Carson's head in front of millions of viewers. The audience gasped. Carson froze. Shelley Winters sat back down as if nothing had happened. Then she continued talking. That was it. A single moment that crossed the line from eccentricity to outright disrespect. Carson, drenched and humiliated, finished the interview with tight professionalism. But the verdict was already decided. Shelley Winters was banned permanently. She never appeared on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson again. To understand how severe that was, you need to know the power structure of late-night television at the time. Carson's show could make or break performers. A comedian could go from unknown to superstar overnight if Johnny invited them to move from the guest chair to the couch. A musician could sell out national tours after a single strong performance. Even A-list actors treated the show like a royal summons. Being banned wasn't just embarrassing, it was career sabotage. When Winters soaked Carson, she didn't just insult a host. She undermined the biggest kingmaker in entertainment. And Johnny never forgot. And Winters wasn't the only one to face Carson's wrath. Bobcat Goldthwait literally set a chair on fire during his Tonight Show appearance with Jay Leno, and he was banned instantly. Howard Stern showed up with 2 lingerie models and caused such chaos that even Leno walked off stage. Kathy Griffin's career-long habit of pushing boundaries got her barred from multiple talk shows, Carson's included. But Winters' offense was different. She embarrassed Johnny directly, and nothing triggered him more deeply than being made to look foolish on air. The irony? Shelley Winters later admitted she barely remembered the incident. But Johnny never let it go. For him, control was everything. Whether confronting cheating spouses, waging personal wars with Wayne Newton, or cutting off entire comedians for stepping out of line, Carson held tight to every slight. And the woman who poured water on him learned that lesson instantly. In the end, Shelley Winters' ban became one of the most notorious Tonight Show exiles of all time. A fiery Hollywood legend clashing with the king of late-night television, live, unrehearsed, and unforgettable. She walked onto that stage a 2-time Academy Award winner. She walked off it, a Hollywood cautionary tale. And Johnny Carson, smiling, charming, in total command, never let her back again. But the story doesn't end with Shelley Winters being banned, because what happened after that night reveals even more about the complicated and often volatile ecosystem behind The Tonight Show. After the incident, word spread fast through Hollywood. Publicists whispered, agents panicked, and producers quietly warned their clients never to do a Shelley Winters. In an era where late-night television was the most powerful publicity machine in America, getting blacklisted wasn't just a setback. It was a scarlet letter that followed you everywhere. Winters, fiery as ever, brushed it off in interviews, claiming she had no regrets. But insiders who worked with her at the time said otherwise. She knew she had crossed the one man nobody in show business dared to cross. And meanwhile, inside NBC, Carson's inner circle closed ranks. Ed McMahon joked about the incident privately, but producers made sure no guest ever got that close to humiliating Johnny again. Security protocols were quietly tightened. Guest briefings became more serious. And Carson himself became even more guarded, more cautious about who he allowed into that coveted guest chair. Because for all the laughs and all the charm, Johnny Carson had a deep fear of losing control. Throughout the 70s and 80s, that fear only grew stronger. Alcohol, personal turmoil, broken marriages, bitter feuds. Carson lived with chaos off stage, but on stage he demanded order, respect, and predictability. And that's why Shelley Winters's ban mattered so much. It wasn't just a punishment, it was a message. Carson wasn't going to tolerate being the punchline of someone else's joke. The fallout extended far beyond Winters. Other celebrities took note. Comedians toned down their material. Actors rehearsed their stories. No one wanted to be the next casualty of Carson's quiet but unmistakable wrath. And yet, Hollywood never stopped buzzing about that infamous moment. Over the decades, whenever a star stumbled on live TV, whenever someone said something outrageous or behaved unpredictably, producers would lean in and whisper, "Careful. Remember Shelley Winters." Her name became shorthand for going too far. But perhaps the most surprising part of all is this. Carson never spoke publicly about the ban. Not once. Not in interviews. Not in books. Not even in his retirement. The king of late night chose silence. And in Hollywood, silence is louder than any punchline. Shelley Winters may have walked off that stage soaked in defiance, but Johnny Carson held the final word, not by speaking it, but by never letting her speak on his stage again. So, what do you think? Was her ban deserved, or did Carson take his power too seriously? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into late-night history, make sure to like, subscribe, and stick around. There are still countless untold stories from Hollywood's past, and we're just getting started.